Thank you, everybody, for joining us. My name is Mary Hoff. I use she, her pronouns. I've got salt and pepper hair, and I'm wearing a blue and green sweater because it is still kind of winter here in Minnesota. Thank you all for joining us. Today, we have two colleagues from Washington State University, and they're going to be sharing about the resources that they've put together to support their colleagues, faculty on campus through resources as well as their peer-to-peer support. Before we get started, I have a couple of just announcements that we'd like to make every session. One, we want to acknowledge that in Minnesota that we're standing on the rightful homelands of Indigenous peoples, and we recognize that the U.S. did not uphold its end of the land treaties. It's the current and continued displacement of Indigenous peoples that allows the state of Minnesota to exist today. We also would like to make the state the affirmation of commitment at the Institute on Community Integration. We affirm our commitment to address systemic racism, ableism, and all other inequities and forms of oppression to ensure inclusive communities. And with that, I am going to stop sharing my screen and want to welcome Kristi and Marcus, who will be presenting and then leading a conversation. With that, I'll turn it over to you.
Excellent. In one sec, I'm pulling up just cleaning my desktop, but not really doing much house cleaning with that, but just getting the presentation all squared away. I just received it via email.
Marcus, while you're working on that, go ahead.
Yeah.
I mean, we could just do quick introductions.
Yes.
Perfect. That's great. Whoops.
I can go ahead and start while Marcus is working on that. I'm Kristi Tippett, WSU Roar Director. I've been in this role for 3 years and feel really lucky to get to do this work. And I'm excited for you all as you're embarking on your own projects. And we're really excited to talk about faculty supports and some of the things that we've learned through our experiences at WSU Roar.
Right. Well, thank you, everybody. And we are set to go, which is wonderful. My name is Marcus Poppen. I'm an associate professor of special education here at Washington State University. Thank you so much for having us. We have had a great opportunity over the last, it's almost been 10 years in terms of kind of developing and growing an inclusive post-secondary education program called WSU Roar that we'll talk a little bit about today, and particularly some of the ways that we've engaged and supported faculty to ensure that our students have some meaningful and rich learning experience within our university campus. It would be great, as we were talking, we're just getting a little bit situated as we were talking about it. Anymore we work so much of our stuff is kind of web-based and with links and all of those pieces. We just wanted to make sure we had a hard copy to be able to share with you today. And so just took a couple of minutes to get situated with that. Would also love to, as we get started, hear who's in the room. And I think that'll help us make sure that we've got a bit of a presentation that we'll share with you, some things that we've done. But as much as we can, I think trying to create something that's going to be meaningful for you, going to fit your needs. We'd love to get to know who's our audience. Who are you? Where are you? What are you representing? And maybe what are you hoping to get out of today? And we'll just do it popcorn. Whoever would like to go first, and then we'll kind of move on to the next people.
Well, I'll be very un-Minnesotan and jump in first. I know you appreciate that, Mary. My name is Christian Brzezinski. I serve as the Director for Accessibility Services at Bemidji State University and Northwest Technical College. But in this endeavor, I am for the release of the RFP and hopefully getting our own inclusive higher education program here at Bemidji State off the ground in the coming year. And my hope is I'm in the phase of things. So all things that I might not know. I don't know what I don't know, and so the learning is wide open.
Well, you're in for a great experience. I can guarantee you that. So looking forward to catering to you today.
Can you all
Who'd
hear
like to
me?
go next?
Yeah, I'm Stephanie Nordstag. I'm the new Inclusive Higher Ed Program Coordinator, Program Manager at Normandale Community College in Bloomington, Minnesota. I just started 2 weeks ago, and I'm joining a group that has been working this year, getting some things together. So now I'm trying to build some infrastructure and some procedures and see how we can get our program kind of lifted. We're hoping to get program approval in about a month here, and then look for CTP status and all of that as we go. But we're hoping for a pilot group in the fall. So I'm just still trying to like hungry hippo as much information as I can, as I go. I'm thankful to be here.
Hi, my name is Erin Thompson. I'm a program director at Lake Superior College in Duluth, Minnesota, so in the northern part of the state. And so we are really excited as a second year grantee. I've been here almost 9 months now, and kind of had nothing to start with, and we're doing what we can, learning as we go to be really the first inclusive model in our min-state system that is, beyond like a 1 year vocational focused program that exists currently. And so we started with 3 pilot students this semester. I think for me, it's really just kind of navigating how we can best support faculty. I think our faculty are definitely a little overwhelmed at the idea, and trying to help kind of break that into smaller pieces and talk about universal design for learning and how all these pieces will come together. And don't want to put a lot more on their shoulders, but I feel like that message is not maybe coming through as clear as I'd like it to. So helping faculty feel more comfortable and confident, and get that engagement and build from there. Really excited to see the potential future of what things would look like in 2 years, 4 years, 5 years from now.
And are there a couple more?
Yeah, I'm Allison Jensen. My pronouns are she, her. I'm the Director of Accessibility Resources at Inver Hills Community College, which is in the Southeast Metro, just south of St. Paul. We are in the process of building up our grant plan towards building for a program. I have a background before moving into higher ed in K-12, both mild to moderate and severe profound inclusive higher ed for intellectual disabilities. So I'm hoping to build on those experiences and bring them into that setting. And I want to pass it off to my teammate here.
Yeah, hi, I'm Aaron Pearson. I'm the access specialist at both Inver Hills Community College and Dakota County Technical College. Some of you I know because until a couple months ago, I was at Minneapolis Community and Technical College for a long time. But my background is more in program design and instructional design. I worked at the Science Museum of Minnesota for 16 years doing that, and particularly creating inclusive learning experiences. So this is really exciting for me, and I'm glad that Allison wants to do this. So uh, we're we're here to learn everything we can so we can get this up and running.
Excellent. Well, thank you, everybody. That was everybody. Mary, you've already introduced yourself. I think did we hear from Aaron? Yes. Okay, great. Thank you. Well, at this time, I'll go ahead and share my screen. So we'll do a little bit of checking to confirm everybody able to see that come through. Okay. Awesome. Kristi, do you want to kick us off? And you're muted.
Do it once a day. I'm really excited to get to connect with everybody today. And while we go through these slides, I want to make sure that it's as interactive as you all need it to be. So I know we have hope to have some time remaining for Q&A at the end, but feel free to pop in as you have those questions as they're relevant to the slides that we're working on. So hi, thanks everybody for being here.
Yeah, and I'll just interject that if people are more comfortable popping it into the chat, I can watch the chat for us and kind of help us pause.
Perfect.
Thank you, Mary.
I appreciate that. Yeah. All right. So we want to spend a little bit of time talking about the value of participation in university courses, and also share some information that are findings from a program evaluation that we completed in the last year or so. We want to talk about the findings there and then move into faculty supports and resources. So we can move on to the next slide. Yeah, so let's just really set the stage a little bit and talk about why participation in university courses is such a big deal for students with intellectual and developmental disabilities. We know that it forms the heart of inclusive post-secondary ed and gives students with IDD a chance to be part of the college experience alongside their peers. So we can move to the next slide, Marcus. One common way that programs support this is by letting students audit courses or having students enroll in courses for degrees or for credit. And so we do know that in the 2003 or 2023-2024 academic year, that audit courses made up 42% of inclusive offerings at TIPSID sites. And that's a pretty significant chunk. So auditing lets students with IDD access meaningful academic content. It's not just about learning facts. It helps them build literacy, develop self-awareness, express themselves, and explore career interests in those spaces. These experiences can be really valuable. We also know that they can be really vulnerable, and that there are some challenges and ways that we can support these efforts. And so we know that supporting students in audit courses comes with some challenges around access, providing the right support at the right time, and making sure that courses align with each student's goals. And since every program is a little bit different, these challenges need to be tailored solutions. So we can move to the next slide. Yeah, which slide are we on? Let's see. Oh, yep. So we want to take just a few minutes to introduce a program evaluation led by Dr. Marcus Poppen, completed during the 2003-2024 academic year. And because it became a turning point for how we support our faculty and ultimately our students. And so we partnered with doctoral students to take a look at a structured look at how our current practices and outcomes support our students. And the goal wasn't to grade anyone, it was just to understand in a clear and evidence-based way what was working well, where barriers were showing up, and what supports were most needed in our context. And I do, before we talk about what we learned and how it directly informed many of the faculty supports we use now, I do want to just briefly introduce WSU ROAR and our specific context, and that's on the next slide. So ROAR is Washington State University's 2-year inclusive post-secondary education program, launched in 2018. We're a fully residential program, so that means our students live on campus and engage in the day-to-day WSU experience. And we currently serve 30 students. Our program focuses on helping students build skills and independence through inclusive academics, through campus involvement, career development, with individualized supports tailored to each student's goals. And as part of that academic experience, course access, including auditing, matters a lot because it's one of the primary ways that our students participate alongside their peers and connect learning to future employment and also to adult life. So because improving the audit course experience has been a strategic priority for us, that we partnered with Marcus and doctoral students to complete that formal program evaluation, really centered on the audit course experience. And so I'll let Marcus take the next few slides and really dig into that program evaluation process.
Awesome. Great. Thank you, Kristi. And, I'll add just a couple of pieces there. And it's been fun to kind of be a part of the national landscape of inclusive post-secondary education programs over the last, 10 or so years. And so, we're situated on the West Coast. If you pull open a map of all of the comprehensive transition programs around the country, or even inclusive post-secondary education programs, you'll see that there's a real dearth of programs on the West side. So in Washington, Oregon, Idaho, Alaska, Wyoming, and Hawaii, there's one or so. And in California, there's a growing number of those programs. If I understand right, Minnesota's in a similar situation where, there aren't a lot of these programs, and that there's some forward momentum and some growth in trying to expand and really grow these opportunities for students with intellectual and developmental disabilities. These programs have just been a delight to be able to watch grow and expand over that time. Understanding and really seeing and in ways living the impact that these programs have on the lives of the students within our communities and our states and our regions is pretty impactful. And you really can see why there is an increased attention and support and motivation to be able to grow and expand these programs even throughout the country. Now, as we think about and kind of watch that expansion, we recognize that there are going to be very different models of what these programs look like around the country, where some programs are really hands-off, where we want students to enroll in our classes, we want students to have the same experience as degree-seeking students. Maybe these are students that are either dually enrolled in high school, or maybe they're living at home. There's a lot of different situations that could take place there. From the other side, on the other hand of things, where students are really maybe more involved in really one-on-one programming, and there's a lot of support provided to those students. So you've got this sort of ginormous continuum around what these different programs look like. We find ourselves probably on that side of being a little bit more of an inclusive program than we do kind of a separate program. However, as a part of that, one of the challenges that we've faced within our university setting is finding ways for students to be able to enroll in our classes for credit. And so rather than having students enroll in our classes for credit, the way that we've structured these academic experiences is by providing students with opportunities to audit those courses where they are making satisfactory academic progress towards their plan of study or their program of study within our WSU ROAR program, which is an improved comprehensive transition program for the federal student financial aid. So just as we think about those contexts within WSU ROAR, recognizing that, our students are going to be experiencing, and what we're going to be talking about today with faculty supports really does relate to students who are enrolled in these audit course experiences. But from an instructor standpoint, from a faculty standpoint, these are students that are enrolled in my class and our class, and that these are students that are going to be experiencing the same types of expectations as all of our students, recognizing there might be some additional modifications or accommodations that are made to be able to support those. So just wanted to kind of add to Kristi's contextualization of where we're coming from and a little bit of our background, and then recognizing that there's really a lot of different ways that programs are going to be doing this. Now, as a result of sort of that diversity, and we think about the differences in the ways that programs either carry out or implement, that we recognize that inclusive academic experiences are one of the core paramount pieces of students enrolling in inclusive post-secondary education programs. That is a really big priority of the things that we're trying to support and what we're trying to teach our students for many of those same reasons that Kristi had outlined. Now, as we go through and we've developed these pieces, what we have encountered is times where faculty might be resistant, or times where faculty feel stuck or don't really know what to do, or even us as program staff might find ourselves, well, how can we find the best match? What are the best ways to be able to support our students? And so as a result of that work, what we really decided was important is to develop an internal evaluation process where we were going to be talking to various instructors and students and staff to really learn from our partners to understand more so, what is that audit course experience look like within WSU ROAR? What are the benefits? What are the challenges? And then what are the things that we can do better to be able to provide supports to our students? So right now, what I'll do is kind of walk through a few of the different findings that we found within that program evaluation. So the first finding is thinking about the evaluation audit course experiences. So thinking about the likes, the dislikes, and the overall impressions. What we identified is that students really valued learning alongside their peers, feeling like they were a part of that WSU community, and that instructors appreciated students' enthusiasms and unique perspectives in class. So at times, students would bring diversity into the classroom and bring perspectives that were really important to all of those students. And some examples that we saw were examples within group work, where it really taught students with and without disabilities to be able to collaborate and communicate and work together. And our WSU Roar students really brought some unique and some important perspectives to that. All at the same time that we found that there were some opportunities with challenges, such as some unclear expectations. It's an audit course. What do I have to do? What can I do? What are the choices? And then there was also findings related to limited communication about those roles. And so what was the responsibility of a faculty member or instructor in supporting some of these students? So all of these become very helpful for us as we're thinking about what can we do to better support faculty within our program. We really like this quote here up on the page. I'll go ahead and read it briefly. Most of my classes had what I wanted to study for career and something to do for fun. But sometimes when I'm taking notes, the professor's going so fast. It's like, oh my God, I'm like, yo, 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 could you wait a minute? So, thinking about that experience, very similar to the experience of students without disabilities. But again, it's another pathway for us to be able to identify potential supports and ways that we can improve that experience for our students. So these were our key findings around the audit course experience, likes, dislikes, and overall impressions. The next area was thinking about instructor supports and resources. And so what was working, what maybe else was needed. So instructors noted limited awareness of available supports and resources. With hope, Kristi, that has changed within the last couple of years. It'd be fun to kind of come back and see how that's been changed after some of the things that we've implemented. But this was important for us to hear, right? We needed to understand that there was an absence of that awareness and what supports and resources would be available to support them supporting our students. And then staff also were providing more informal guidance. Staff provided informal guidance to students, but more structured onboarding was requested. So sort of what are we doing to help set the stage for our faculty and staff so that they know that they're going to have a student who is in our program enrolled within other classes? And then what are the ways that we're going to be able to provide sort of resources to them to help prevent some of the buildup of some of those concerns? And then some recommendations that we got included clearer communication, some course and customized specific strategies. Is this a lab-based course? Is this is this a large lecture hall? What are some course specific strategies? And then opportunities for ongoing check-in. So I'll go ahead and read a couple of quotes from one from a student and one from an instructor. First, maybe the ROAR staff just don't email our professors. Maybe the ROAR staff just email our professors. Sometimes our professors don't even know what ROAR is. Again, that lack of awareness around these programs. The next quote, I think meeting them in week one, perhaps, would help me immensely to better navigate through the audit courses I teach, an audit course instructor. Talking about ways that they might be able to get connected with that student early on during the process so they know that student and can provide the supports that are going to be beneficial to them. The next area of findings that we looked at, we're really looking at what does it mean to meaningfully participate and what are some of the barriers to that participation and some recommendations and strategies that we could implement to help increase that meaningful engagement and participation. So students and staff emphasize the importance of active engagement and peer interaction, right? When I'm sitting in class and I'm there, I'm a part of things, people are asking me questions, I can turn to my neighbor and have a conversation with them. People know my name. When we're looking at group assignments, I'm assigned to those particular groups, and really thinking about those interactions and opportunities for engagement to be really what that meaningful participation looked like. For some people, well, and I'll read this quote here, meaningful participation might mean that they attempt to turn in a writing. or collaborate with me after the assignment prompt. So there's different gradations of what that meaningful participation can look like, individualized based upon the students. But it really is about sort of that idea of being active, being seen, and being involved with the peers that are participating in the classes. There were a few barriers that emerged, including inaccessible materials, concerns around peers without disabilities who are who are at times rude or unkind to some of our students, and professors or faculty will maybe have to kind of intervene and get in the middle of some of those pieces. Unclear roles, and then limited instructed preparation. And then suggestions included providing tailored supports. Are there ways to connect peer mentors into that work? And then what can we really do to focus on faculty development to help address some of those issues around limited instructive preparation, what people can do, those kinds of things. The last area that I'll share here is really thinking about the impact of these experiences. I think anytime that we think about the inclusive post-secondary education programs, really trying to capture the essence or the why is pretty difficult. But all of the same, there's a couple of great impact statements and thoughts that we got on why this is important. So, through this, students shared that they gained confidence, academic skills, and a stronger sense of belonging through their experiences in audit courses. Staff and instructors reported professional growth and a deeper inclusion awareness that benefits everybody within their classrooms. And then the broader campus, of course, benefited from increased diversity and inclusive practices throughout our college and campus programs. One student said, "I would say my classes really helped me get ready for my career and my work career." An instructor shared, "It has changed my approach to teaching. Having WSU Roar student makes me question the efficacy of my approach to instruction." So folks are really learning from these experiences to try to make some formative changes in the work that they're doing so that the students can benefit in the long run. The last slide here is thinking about a few set of recommendations. This is coming from the evaluation report. This was all handed off to the program with the idea that, hey, here's some findings that you can begin to implement. As Kristi mentioned, this was at the end of 2023, 2024. And so now there's been a year or two of kind of implementing some of these things that we'll be talking about more. So recommendations include improving introductions for WSU Roar instructors, student information being provided to instructors, more prepared resources for audit course instructors, connecting experienced audit course instructors with new instructors, additional writing specific supports for WSU Roar students. That was one of the technical areas that folks would have liked to see support. Increased education and outreach about WSU Roar. Increased communication and availability of staff for instructors to help problem solve. Encouraging regular meetings between audit course instructors and WSU Roar students. Developing expectations for assignments and gradings. And earlier and more streamlined enrollment processes, which we've been able to work on addressing some of those components. So as we look at, the big evaluation, we go out, we try to collect some information. This is all context specific, right? This is all related to the students within our program. When I also look at this set of final recommendations, I would have loved to have this information 10 years ago when we were starting our program. What are some of the things that we might be able to think about implementing within our program? So this final set of recommendations might be beneficial or meaningful for you as you are, kind of thinking about building a foundation. One of the things that we hear often within the IPSC world or inclusive post-secondary education world is, be intentional around what you build. It can be really hard to change the core foundations of what you build. And so, as you think about the experiences for your students, there might be ways to embed these pieces so those become the culture of your program. Kristi, why don't I turn it over to you? Do we want to pause for questions at all?
Yeah, Marcus, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, Aaron's got a couple of really good questions, but yeah, if you want to go ahead and either read the questions out and address those, that would be great.
Yeah, for sure. I am happy to respond to those questions in the chat. So around audit seekers on our campus. It's not uncommon for students to seek or to take classes for audit, especially as they're still in an exploration phase around their degree path. And so as an instructor in the College of Education, from time to time, I would have a student audit that class, and participation always was dependent upon the student's reason for wanting to audit. And so we do have some faculty code at Washington State University that indicates that faculty are not required to engage with audit seekers. What we have found at Roar is that we have many more eager faculty and faculty partners than we have reluctant faculty partners. And so we've just worked to ensure that we've just established those relationships and provided the support in a unintimidating and supportive environment. So more and more as time goes on, we're finding that the faculty are really eager to participate. We do have the goal of being able to take classes for credit. That is a challenge that's still ahead of us that we're working on. But we've been really excited in the last year to be able to enroll with our degree seeking peers, opening up the course book to our students in a way that it hasn't always been open, such that we're not trying to enroll in audit courses on the first day of class. So that's really felt like a win there for us. Erin, do you have any follow-up questions?
I guess, yeah, I think that's helpful to just hear. I know our faculty has kind of been like, we don't have any measures to do that, and trying to help with kind of creating, some rubrics and, some guidelines and ideas, and also not push too much on them. But I guess I'm curious, if you do have a student who's wanting to audit a course where the faculty maybe doesn't have a lot of buy-in or interest, have you found a way to help make that meaningful, or help the student kind of demonstrate their knowledge with a little bit more work on, I guess, the program side of things, or with other faculty support? And maybe that's it. Certainly, if that's too detailed of a question, we can save it for later.
It's a really great question. I think we're going to answer it in part as we move through our slides. Would it be okay if we revisit it after a few slides here?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. No, it's a great question. Thank you for that. All right, Marcus, I'll let you.
Do you all see, so I'm sharing my screen now, which is great. Do you see like the chat windows and the pictures of all of you, or are you just seeing the PowerPoint?
It's just the PowerPoint for me.
Oh, that is excellent. So then I just want to make sure I'm not covering anything up. So I think this will move forward. Yeah. Okay. I was just looking for a few minutes, and I'm bad at multitasking. I was trying to pop the full report into the chat. I might be able to do that after we close and kind of engage. But if you'd like, pop into the QR code. If somebody has the link and they want to share it in the chat, welcome to do that as well.
And we'll also do a follow-up email, Marcus, and we can include the link in that as well.
Great.
All right, so now that we've shared what we've learned from the evaluation, we'll shift to talking about what we've done with that information. So one of our biggest takeaways was that faculty want to be inclusive, and that they're more successful when the supports are clear and practical and easy to access. So WSU Roar developed a set of new supports that are designed to reduce any of the guesswork, to build shared expectations, and really just to make collaboration feel straightforward. So on the next slide, we've listed a few of those supports, starting with student biographies. All of this in direct response to feedback from faculty and students and other stakeholders through the evaluation. So our student biographies are quick, usable snapshots that include each student's interests and goals, how they prefer to participate, what kinds of feedback and grading practices work best for them, and even what belonging looks like from the student's perspective. So the idea is to help instructors connect with the student as a learner and set the stage for meaningful participation from day one. The second thing is our faculty connection website. I'm going to dig into both of these a little bit more on the next slide. But the second one was our faculty connection website, which serves as an on-demand hub of practical tools Faculty can access guidance when they need it without having to wait for a meeting or to track someone down. A lot of times the feedback that we received from faculty was that they didn't, I heard someone say in this meeting, didn't know what they didn't know. And so during meetings, sometimes it was hard to ask the questions that would help us support them. And so after having had experiences in the classroom space, then being able to access the faculty website per their convenience and schedule, it's made a lot of difference for us here. So we've also added scheduled communication, and that's just consistent, low pressure reminders that we're here to collaborate, along with direct links back to the faculty connection resources. And it's really just meant to make support feel ongoing and accessible as opposed to crisis driven. And finally, we offer traveling office hours. And so we recognize that instructors have different needs, have different schedules and preferences, and this serves to bring support to them in a flexible way while keeping accessibility a priority. Together, these supports are meant to make inclusion feel more doable in real time so that faculty feel supported and students experience more consistent and meaningful access in their courses. So on the next slide, oh, Marcus, I think I figured out how to share, but on the next slide, we have a couple of those supports that I just wanted to spend a little bit of time reviewing with you all. Let me see if I can do this. Hold on.
Yeah.
I think I found a little workaround.
Do you want me to stop?
Well, it told the first time I tried it, hold on. It was going to give me the option to bounce you out of sharing. So let's see if it works again. I think I've got it here.
Yeah.
All right. Is everybody able to see Samuel's biography? All right. With Samuel's permission, I wanted to share what one of those student biographies look like. And is it big enough to be, it's viewable? If not, Marcus, we can maybe drop it into the share as well, or into the chat as well. I'd sent it to you.
It's pretty small. If you're able to make it a little bit bigger, like that bottom thing.
Yeah, I can a little bit. Let's see. It's going to move a bunch of it off the page, but
that helps a bunch. Okay.
Okay. We can scroll around here too. So we start with just an introduction around a student's interests and goals. And in this case, Samuel's interested in designing and marketing print items. He has started both an Etsy and Redbubble account. He would also really love to work for USPS and is experiencing some frustration over the current state of affairs there. But yeah, he's interested in systems and mail and letter writing, graphic design. So just a little bit of a snapshot of the student, and this is entirely managed and completed by the student. And so only what the student wants to share is included in this biography. We have spots for students to report on intended outcomes for auditing. And we also do have a guide to support the student as they're filling out a biography with some different things that different ideas, things that they might include in sections here. So Samuel wants to gain knowledge and skills that are going to help advance him towards his career. We sometimes have students that write in that box, I want to participate as a full-time student. One of my goals is to become a matriculated degree-seeking student. So I want to participate fully in all coursework, activities, assignments, discussions, and would you please provide a grade as I practice to become a degree-seeking student. So that intended outcomes looks entirely different. Some people write just enrichment. I'm in this class. I'm taking bowling this semester. Fun. So it can look at all kinds of ways. We have a spot for the students to talk about their strengths. That's not one of the areas where we have ideas that they could review to use in that space. And then we have a spot for them to think about what their participation in that class looks like. What would be preferred for them. Since we have started implementing the biographies and that faculty are receiving this ahead of the first day of class, we have not experienced reluctance from faculty at all. So for students who have said, I want to be a degree-seeking matriculated student, we have them receiving grades from faculty, and nobody has questioned that, even though our faculty do understand that they're not required to provide those. So at ROAR, we're seeking ways to ensure our partners are eager. They can write down those things that help them succeed. Think about what belonging looks like for them. For Samuel, it's being another student in the class. Belonging is feeling or is being treated like I'm part of the group. And then anything that they might want to share. And this student has been really open there and has chosen to disclose their disabilities, having autism and ADHD. And then he described what that looks like for him. All really useful in creating eager partnerships and ensuring that students and faculty there's a little bit of connection and investment there on the first day of the class. I see something in chat, so I'm going to check and see. Oh, thank you. Okay. All right, I'm going to stop that share. And Marcus, since you have the slide, or would you mind popping into the slides? Because I think that will link us directly to the website. Otherwise, I could also share it.
Yeah, are you sharing right now? No, you're not.
No, but I can. And you know what? It probably makes more sense for me to do it. So
yeah, if you want to navigate us through the highlights.
And I'll let you all know for reference, I am just typing in WSU Roar, and on our homepage in community, there's a menu option for faculty support hub. So that's where I've gone, and I've got to use this workaround again. Hold on. Okay, I can share the faculty support hub. All right, is that visible for everybody? Okay. All right, so again, this is a work in process at Roar, and you will find as you develop your programs as well that you build during the summer, and then you tread water during the academic year, and then we're really excited to get to revisit this and build again this summer. But our academic coordinator spent a significant amount of time thinking about sitting with the feedback from faculty and students and providing resources for them in this space. The piece that we're going to work on, Marcus, I was glad to hear you say like it would be exciting to revisit that. We're doing that. Casey's making notes every time that he meets with faculty and asking questions, pointed questions about this resource, so that it can just be very fluid and continue to build for them. One of the things we want to do is to provide little videos for each one of the areas or the topics of interest that have come up. And that will just be a time-consuming process we'll get to later. But all of these categories here on the home page are in response to questions that faculty have brought to us and things that they've suggested they would like to know more about. So I just clicked on the supporting inclusive communication and connection, and you'll see that there's information here for faculty, and right here at the top there's a little menu option. You can pop down to frequently asked questions if that's what you're most interested in, or you can read through the content. And after the summer, we're hoping to have those videos right up here as people choose to consume the information in that way. So we have a little bit of information about understanding ID, general guidelines for inclusive connection, specific tips for common scenarios, and we'll build those out as we go as faculty continue to seek advising around scenarios that happen in the classroom. And again, then those frequently asked questions. And then sometimes, not always, it's felt appropriate to provide a little bit of like a do's and don'ts. So do use clear, plain language when giving instruction or feedback, and do provide visual aids or written instruction alongside verbal explanations. Don't talk to the support aide or peer instead of the student if that's applicable. Yeah, so that's just one of the topics we've dug into, and you'll see we've had faculty inquiring about assignment modifications, accommodations, feedback and grading, outcome of audit courses, belonging and accountability, assistive technology. Full transparency, we have not had faculty ask us about universal design for learning, so that's our little add in there. Self-advocacy. But one thing I might mention around universal design for learning, we had a student recently in a classroom ask for an accommodation, And that was after a certain time period, assignments were being locked. And so students couldn't go back and continue to work on or revise any assignments. And so he'd asked for an opportunity to do that. And after the instructors spent some time thinking about that, he decided that that was a very reasonable accommodation for every student in the course. And so they now have extended time on and flexible due dates for assignments and extended times on tests. So without talking about universal design for learning in that class, our students' advocacy in the space really impacted the experience for everybody in a really cool way. So just a little example there. Feel free to access this and borrow content and text. If you're looking through this resource later and you think, hey, this, you know what, I'd like to see this language a little bit differently, or this language could be more inclusive, or I have an idea that might be really useful in this space, feel free to share and communicate that with either Marcus or I. It feels like it's a work in progress and we're happy to share it. Do you guys have any questions about this, about the faculty website or the student biographies right now?
Okay. When you're building the student biographies, you know, we've just had pilot students, and some of them, you know, will come up with a lot of ideas on their own. Do you invite them to have other people be a part of that discussion that might be able to share some thoughts? Obviously, I want it be the student's choice on what's included and what's not, but if maybe they're kind of drawing a blank, do you kind of give them like some word choices or some ideas or examples? Like, how do you help a student engage if maybe they're a little bit more passive or not quite sure where to start?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And we've run into that as well. And so when we first work with students on completing the biography, it's a really flexible space where we're all together. And so you have some options to sit in a group with your peers, provide natural support to one another. You also have an option to connect with either an academic coordinator or other support staff in that area, whether it's academic coaches. I was in there this year working on those biographies. And then they're fluid over time. So we often, as questions from we receive questions from faculty, we revisit those with students and have open conversations around whether we want to add more information, remove more information. But what we found is students are pretty open and want to share. But definitely having those natural support pods where students are bouncing ideas off each other has been really useful. Just a useful nudge for students who are reluctant to record anything in those spaces. Does that help, Erin?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah. Are there any other questions about the supports?
I know one thing that was of interest was the peer-to-peer for faculty. Could you share a little bit more about that specifically?
Yes. So it is an area of priority for us and an area for growth. Marcus, you might remember I'd mentioned just seems like it's been a day ago, but it's probably a month ago, around hosting workshops each semester and having a panel of faculty working together with folks who are maybe a little bit reluctant or hesitant. Generally, what we find when we have partners who are less eager to collaborate, it's just a sense of anxiety around not knowing. This is a new experience. And how am I going to do that? What's this going to look like? And why is the student taking my class anyway? What do they stand to get or benefit? And what are their intended outcomes? So it's all those questions that we have because we've not been in that space and had that experience. And so we know it'd be really, really supportive for faculty to get to talk to each other and ROAR staff. And so what we're hoping to do is to collaborate with the Student Accommodations and Disability Resources Center, formerly known as the Access Center at WSU. They already host some of these types of workshops, semester workshops. And so have ongoing conversation around how we can collaborate in that space. That's otherwise an area that we're not doing very well yet, but we're going to get there, and it's absolutely a priority. Yeah.
I could add just a couple of things there that is, that I think relates to both that peer-to-peer connection, but then also I think the development and the growth of new programs is, the benefits of champions. And so, having allies within your programs that are members of their departments and of their colleges and of their programs who are supportive both internally of having program students enrolled in these programs as a part of their classes, to find opportunities to just kind of nudge and connect with their own colleagues to encourage them to be inclusive and invite the both tell them it's okay, it's really not that scary, it's not that bad, it's really kind of rewarding, it's great, and to offer support to be there as an ally in the case that they in the case that they need some services and support. So I can think about within our college, there's a few people that go to that have just kind of been really good allies. And then it's amazing. We live in a small town. I'll be out hanging out with friends and they'll say, "Hey, Marcus, I had one of your students in my class." Or, "Hey, I really had this. It was a great experience. And I told my colleague that, and now we're going to create a neat opportunity." And so, that word of mouth and that climate and that culture of wanting to be supportive. Right now, we are here to support our students. They are what is why we are in higher education. And I think that's not an isolated experience. I think that finding those allies and those people within your colleges who are interested in those can be really helpful in helping to grow and kind of build capacity across the board.
Our academic, can I jump in there? Yeah. So our academic coordinator has also gotten in the habit of providing a little quote at the end of his scheduled communications, one faculty to another, and getting permissions for all of those. So that's been really fun for me to get to see, because sometimes I don't get to hear those things either. And I think it goes a long way to encourage each other towards greater inclusion. The other part, as Marcus was talking, I was thinking about some of our efforts in the peer-to-peer support. This summer, when we're going to build out those high quality videos for our website, it won't be just Roar staff developing those, and we definitely want to bring in some of our faculty partners to collaborate on those and to be the voice in the video and the face in the video. And so we've got a running list of volunteers, and hoping that will also be really useful.
Well, that was all that we prepared for you. And so, I notice the top of the hour is coming. I don't know if folks probably have time for one or so questions.
Well,
if folks would like.
We go through till quarter after, so we actually do have
Okay.
15 minutes. Two things. One, I'd like to launch the poll before people have to leave. I think Allison just said that she needed to go. And then let's continue the conversation. And one of the things that I think, Aaron, maybe weigh in, but I think I would like to circle back to that meaningful participation. And to me, that's more of talking about maybe the learner outcomes that's agreed to at a beginning of a semester between a student, the faculty member, and have that being facilitated through the inclusive higher ed staff. And so let me launch the poll, and then let's maybe have you guys talk about that a little bit. Great. Thank you, everyone. And Erin, did you, it was that a question that I know they were gonna uh, answer that with some of the slides, but would you like more information in that area?
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like I don't know if you'll have necessarily more answers, but if there's anything further you feel like to kind of add on to that piece, it sounds like when we originally launched our, I think it's hard starting now and seeing all of these things that are being developed as best practices, and maybe they're 3 or 4 or 6 years into the program where you're kind of building some of these things in, and I'm kind of struggling with it. Obviously, it's hard for change, so how much can we have from day one with some of those options for as full of inclusion and engagement and participation and those opportunities. And so I guess we were looking at students really having the choice whether they are taking the courses for credit versus for audit right from the beginning. But also I feel it feels a little intimidating, or makes me a little worried hearing that you guys have been quite a few years in and are still working towards that, and kind of finding that balance with we want to look at what's the best practices now, but also knowing that we're at the very beginning of our journey and getting that participation from faculty and staff and what an individualized plan would look like. And I guess I'm also curious if you guys have an accessibility coordinator or disability services coordinator that is also working, or like, are they working more together with you or sending in accommodations, or are they not really getting separate accommodations since they are entirely doing audit format? So I guess just kind of looking at what does that meaningful credential piece look like as far as that audit, and is there any type of like consistency or expectation across the board with different faculty or different programs? Like you said, faculty are not required to do that, but more often than not, it seems like they are on board.
Yeah. Do you want me to go first, Marcus?
All right.
Okay, that was a lot of questions in one question. So Marcus, you can take notes and catch what I missed.
Yeah.
Well, so I might start with the collaboration with student accommodations and disability resources. So our students have the option, and 95% of them choose to onboard with student accommodations and disability resources. And through that space, then they can receive testing accommodations and accommodations in the classroom. And that's especially useful for students who want to be degree seeking students and are participating fully in the class. So I think that answers that question, but you can happy to elaborate on it. Okay. Another question that I heard there is around a meaningful participation in the courses, I think, but also then about the meaningfulness of the credentials. So I might speak to the courses really quickly. All of our students develop individualized learning plans for their audit courses. And so we tend to do most of the modifications and accommodations of assignments here in our spaces as needed per the individualized learning plan. So when students choose to share their biographies with faculty, they also know that they can choose to share their individualized learning plan, which communicates what that participation in the class will look like a bit more specifically than the biography does. Not every student will choose to share that, especially our students who may be taking a course for enrichment. They may not choose to share their individualized learning plan. And so then per the goals that the student has set for the course, at WSU ROAR, we provide progress reports based on whether they're meeting those goals or exceeding those goals for that course. And so sometimes participation for a student looks like engaging in discussion and raising my hand to answer or ask questions. It might look like completing and turning in every assignment, but not taking tests. It might look like completing assignments and taking tests, but in an alternative testing space. So it's entirely individualized for each audit course for each student, and managed within the academics under the coordination of our academic coordinator. So That meaningful participation is entirely dependent on the students' goals for that space, and then also their long-term goals.
Kristi, could I ask a follow-up question? So it sounds like the individual learning plan is something that's between what the student is deciding along with inclusive higher ed staff. What's the role of the faculty member in that? Because everything that I've heard and just different sessions I've gone to have talked about it being sort of a collaboration of all three. And it seems like what you're describing, it's maybe more driven by just the student and an inclusive higher ed staff and faculty. And could you expand on that or clarify that?
It is at ROAR, and that is just the nature of our students taking classes for audit. So some of our students are dually enrolled, and for students who are working on eligibility requirements to apply to university or are degree seeking right now are dually enrolled in a community college. And so the process looks a little bit different for those courses and more of a collaboration and conversation with the faculty because those folks are paying for credit. But for our students in audit courses, it's co-developed here at ROAR within academics and the student, but the student is the driver. And so our work is to facilitate attention to goals and then also to encourage students to grow in those spaces. And so if a student says, well, I just kind of want to take notes this year or this semester, we love that, but also what is there something else that you could do that would really advantage you in this space that would help you to grow? Last semester, you took notes in your audit classes and you did a great job with note taking. Let's continue that, but what's the next thing that you could do to grow in this space? And so it's our work to push our students to grow in those spaces, but also they're the driver and determine what meaningful participation looks like in those classes at the end. Yeah.
One thing that I also might add that could be helpful with the conversation is thinking about that meaningful credential and recognizing that the meaningful credential is not earned solely based upon students' participation in audit courses, that is just probably 25, maybe 33% of that full program of study. That program of study also includes participation in individualized programs focused on digital literacy, focused on healthy relationships, focused on career development, career awareness, and there are dedicated classes that students take that are focused on that. That's different than some programs, right? Some programs only want students to earn those meaningful credentials through either enrollment in classes for credit or an audit. The other third of that is work-based learning experiences. And so all of our students are participating in, between 5 and 15 hours a week of work-based learning experiences. And it's that collective component of activities that earns them that meaningful credential that we've worked towards.
Yeah, thank you, Marcus.
So I guess as far as maybe we don't have time to focus too much on this, but I'm curious if you guys have kind of navigated some of the things with your SAP or students who are, entirely auditing. You are a CTP?
We are a CTP, correct.
And students can get financial aid. And so are there issues with not having any classes for credit and GPAs, or that's not at all?
So we have worked with our financial aid office that in our CTP application with our program of study that we have a credit hour equivalency that was built. That's a whole nother presentation at some point, but it is around establishing credit hour equivalencies for the activities that our students are enrolled in that allow them to be determined either as full-time status, part-time, or I think it's like full-time, three-quarter time, and then less than half time are the three different designations based upon the activities that they are engaging. Our SAP policy is probably not something that we can share at this time because it's really embedded within kind of these formal documents would be my thoughts, Stephanie, to that. But I will say that it was a fairly painless and easy process to work with our faculty, our financial aid office to do that. It really stemmed from what are the credit hour equivalencies for like practicum experience courses or internship type experiences. And so we drew upon, for us, it's for every 3 hours of engagement, that counts as 1 credit hour. And so, our full-time status is 10 credit hours. So if somebody's enrolled in 30 hours of activities in a given week, that is equivalent to a minimum of 10 credits, which would be considered that full-time status, all the way up to 14 credits, which is where that 40 hours comes through.
Yeah, and I would just interject that based on the federal law, whether their students are taking classes for credit or audit, those are
Right.
all going towards that status and then eligibility for financial aid. Stephanie, just to reference your question about the SAP policy, our January community of practice, we did have some resources and some examples of SAP. So you should have access to those. If not, we can reshare that link with you.
Thanks, Mary. I do have access to those and I saw them. I talked with our financial aid and registrar folks this morning, and they're, Erin, you may be running into this as well. Their level of concern about getting this passed is pretty high. And so I'm just trying to figure out how some of it is conceptual, right? Because it's so black and white for a traditional setup. You earn this GPA and then you get to continue your financial aid, or you don't, and then you have this, the path is really prescribed. And so I think that there are some people that I'm talking with that are struggling with, so everybody's going to have their own plan. Yep. And it's going to be okay. Like, I promise it's going to be okay. But they're auditing, so they're not getting credit. Yep. But they're going to still have measurable things that we're going to look at for what does progress look like. And so I'm just trying to figure out how part of where I'm at right now is branding and marketing. How do I bring people's concern and anxiety about the unknown down? And how do I frame it in a way that rests with past experience while leaving the door for the adaptability that we need for the program. That was a lot of words to say thank you for explaining, because this has been really helpful.
One thing that was helpful for us, I'm reflecting back on just kind of the initial conversations, is finding somebody from another institution where this was successful and having our financial aid office connect with those people. I vividly remember making those connections, and it did require some of that. So if that is a tip, that would all be helpful. And then being familiar with the laws, like Mary is talking about, and being able to cite some of those official documents and share, like, look, here's the regs that say this needs to happen. And at times you've got to advocate for that. This is the law. We have to follow it.
It's a frustrating part of the process to feel like you're always having to market the program and discuss outcomes and explain to people how students stand to benefit from inclusive practices. We faced that when we were needing to change the audit enrollment process so that our students could enroll with their degree seeking peers as opposed to on the first day of classes. And I just kept hearing it's code. I'm like, but the code is exclusive and we need to change the code. So we did. But you try and start with what could we do? Could we change the code? And at some point you might have to say, yep, code's exclusive, or it's the law. and really push hard.
And thank you for that. It's a good reminder, and our folks have been really open. Like the registrar and the financial aid people they're trying to find a way. It won't work. It's how do we make it work? And so just kind of asking to that, Erin. Erin and I have been emailing a little bit to schedule a time to talk. And Erin, I might have some additional things to share with you next week when we connect.
Yeah, no, that's great. I think we coming in the state of Minnesota when there's not any programs like this that offer, that inclusion in credit bearing classes. And so I find the same thing, that people they want to make it work. They support the idea, but they're very confused on how to make that work. And I think the timeline right now to get the CTP approved is concerning, and figuring all those pieces, but we need to keep moving forward. We can't pause and halt things. And so how do we kind of bridge that and support students? And we're part of a state network of 2-year colleges and universities across the state. So we've got our system office who, we've got, all those extra layers to try to navigate through, but we'll keep moving forward. And it's great that there are so many people across the country that are just very open and excited to share what's working and what's not, and ideas and resources. And so we're on the path.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you, Erin. We would love to hear from you regarding students taking credit-bearing courses. If we make progress on that front, we'll reach out to you, and please do likewise, because it's a process.
Yeah.
I
Thank you.
posted in the chat a couple of resources related to the federal financial aid, and in that are going to be links to the laws and the original documentation, if that is helpful. That was Kate Weir and I and Kristi's predecessor were a part of that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Good. Thank you so much, everybody.